Welcome to Early Care Connection. I'm Izzy Greenberg. Today we are joined by our resident panel of early childhood experts, Meryl Gay from the Connecticut Early Childhood Alliance and Ava Bermudez Zimmerman from Childcare for CT. I'd like to begin by thanking Alba for providing interpretation for us this morning and reminding our guests and everyone else to speak slowly enough that she can get all the information to everyone who needs it. A reminder to use the chat for conversation within the community or to share resources with each other, technical difficulties, and to use the Q&A for questions for our panelists. A couple quick announcements. We have next week, Commissioner Bai, Deputy Commissioner Elena Trueworthy, and staff from Office of Early Childhood will be on to do a listening session on, I guess it's a...
Start.
It's early, yeah, it's early start, but it's a listening session, and well, anyway, they're going to be presenting on early start. So did I say that wrong? Anyway, on early start. So mark your calendars. That's going to be a good one to show up for. Really important information that is transmitted both ways. So I think that one's a good one. The following week, we don't have the topic set for you all yet, but then the week after is Columbus Day, Indigenous Peoples Day. We are off for that holiday. What I did want to just let everybody know is that we've set up a kudo board, and I'm going to share that in the chat right now. This is to, if anyone who would like to send some well wishes to Commissioner Bai on her retirement, some thank you for her service to our community. That is set up for you all to post you can post photos, you can post cute pictures, you can post nice words, you can post anything you want. A simple thank you, a simple gracias, anything you'd like is enough. So we would love to present that to her, next week. And so you've got a week to fill it out. We will also have that link in the chat file, which will be posted with the recording of this. Which is always posted within roughly 24 hours. So if you lose it, you can always go there. Okay, a lot to go through. Today, we've got a great presentation for you as well. So today we're going to be talking about childcare supply and demand versus need, and describing some tools that the Office of Early Childhood uses, things like the social vulnerability map. Meryl's going to start us off with the conversation, and then we've got some great guests to kind of talk us through how this is actually working in different sectors and different parts of the state. So we are joined this morning by Catherine Lantigua. She's the owner of 3 childcare businesses in Bridgeport, K Colorful Daycare. We've got Linda Fecteau, who is a business advisor at the Women's Business Development Council. We've got Courtney Parkerson, who's a director at the Connecticut Project, and Coral Wonderly, a data scientist from the Office of Early Childhood. So thank you to all 4 of you for being here with us today. I know it's a great conversation, and I'm going to start off by passing it to Meryl to give us some context. Meryl, you're up.
Okay. So this conversation was prompted by a bunch of people reaching out to say that they were having more difficulty enrolling children this year than in the past. And I've heard that from people in various different parts of the state. And I wanted to sort of dig into that issue some. We know that statewide there are enough infant toddler spots for about 35% of the children under age 3. So one would think that seems like a kind of low percentage, especially when you compare it to, the much more plentiful supply of preschool spaces. So I wanted to dig into the issue of need versus demand. We can look at something and say, if I'm a little kid with a child under 3 and there's only 1 space for every 3 children my kid's age, I'm going to have trouble finding care. But the issue is that need is different than demand. I can only be in the marketplace demanding care if I have the money to pay for it. And so it is easy to confuse those two, that there's lots of need for care, but there's not demand for it. And the issue is that families are experiencing lots of increasing costs right now. The cost of housing has gone way up. Groceries have gone way up. So there are lots of other demands on that dollar that families have to pay for care. At the same time, the Care for Kids program has been sort of frozen with families not being able to get on. And that's particularly as you have a whole crop of children leaving for kindergarten, trying to refill those spaces when you can't get children on to Care for Kids, makes things all more complicated. I want to point out, if you haven't found it, can I share my screen here?
You should be able to.
Should be able to. Okay, I want to find the Care for Kids. Why is Care for Kids not showing up? Let's try this again. All right. Are you seeing my Care for Kids, or are you seeing my calendar?
We're seeing your Care for Kids.
Okay. If you have not been here and looked at this, the processing status page, the enrollment. So this tells you like when was the last time that they called people off of the list. So anybody, those are the applications that they've received that they're working on. But let's go back up here to this button. And I want to particularly look at this. So in the at the end of July, there were 22,869 kids using Care for Kids. And as of last week, there were 18,828. Now, a lot of those are children who were in summer camp who are now in school. But what you can see is that we've had a big drop off in the number of children. That's 4,000 children fewer being served on Care for Kids right now. And then you've got 3,280 families, which is probably 40 to 4,500 children on the wait list. And that, I'm not telling anybody anything they don't know. That's hard to get children on the Care for Kids right now. So at this point, the sort of main game in town is early start, which is adding 1,000 new spaces. So I wanted folks to understand the early start. The early start uses a competitive application process with OEC calculating a bunch of information for you. And if you're thinking about applying for those slots, you should sort of understand the rules of the game, understand the scoring process, and make a conscious decision about, is this even worth applying for? We don't yet know what OEC is going to use as their criteria. All we can look at is the last one. They may change those rules. But there are some useful tools on here that I think you should be familiar with. First one is areas that are, these are places where childcare is hard to find. Let's pull up this map. Slowly, okay. Okay, so I don't want to talk about the funding points yet. I want to talk about childcare access, which is the if you scroll down. Everybody see this map? Yeah, okay. So the red are places where childcare is in short supply. The dark blue are places where there's lots of care. And you can hover over a space and it'll tell you what the zip code is, and it tells you how many points you would receive because this is a shortage area. So in the 06870 zip code, which I don't remember which zip code that is, it says that there's care for 65% of the children. So they give you only 4 points. If you're out here in this one, which I think is part of Groton, I'm not positive, there's only enough care for 20% of the children. So you'd get 18 points. So obviously, if you look at this and you're in that zip code, you're going to score a lot more points than in that earlier one that we just looked at, where you only got 4 points. In a very competitive process, that difference in points right there could determine whether or not it's worth applying. Because there's a much bigger shortage in all of these places that are red. And one thing that I noticed was I looked at this is that this desertification score looks at care for children ages birth to 5. It does not break down infant toddler care versus preschool care. And there are a few anomalies in that. If I look over here at New Britain, for instance, there's only one infant toddler care for every 8 or 9 children in New Britain. There's a lot of preschool care, but that's a place where that difference really kicks in. There were childcare programs in New Britain that applied for infant toddler slots that didn't get them because essentially the places that had higher desertification scores were able to get those spaces because we don't differentiate between infant toddler care and preschool care. So I just wanted to show you these maps and then show you a little bit of, we mentioned the social vulnerability index. If you scroll further down on this map, there is this thing called the social vulnerability index. And this is something that was created by the Centers for Disease Control. And it was really looking at a slew of different factors that put families, individuals at greater risk of health problems because of social determinants of health. So it could be lack of income. It could be lack of access to transportation. It could be, there are a whole slew of things. During the pandemic, this was a useful tool to look at where were the places that were going to be most impacted by a pandemic. And OEC grabbed that tool when they were figuring out how to get pandemic aid out. Whether it's the best tool to use for trying to determine things that impact childcare or not, I think OECD is still trying to figure that out. They may or may not use this social vulnerability index in the next round. But what I'm trying to point out is that in a month or two, OEC is going to announce a request for applications for 1,000 new spaces for the Early Start program. And one of the things that you ought to do is really read through the rules, read through the scoring points, and figure out whether or not it makes sense for you to apply. And a big factor of that is whether there's a lot of care in your area versus places that don't have any care. But you should read through all the scoring because there are things based on your ability, whether you're accredited versus whether you're going to get accredited, whether you have qualified staff now or you need to hire them. All of those things factor into this. And the supply and demand is one of those issues. Going back up to the top, this was how OEC combined the desertification score and the social vulnerability index score. And what you see are there are particular places that scored high. So like this one down here, the 06605 zip code, you would have gotten a combination of 30 points. If you were out here in, let's look at one of the Hartford zip codes, 06106, where our office is, you would have gotten 12 points for childcare desertification and 20 points for social vulnerability index. If you were in, let me just see if I can find a Waterbury zip code. Yeah, okay, here's a Waterbury zip code. You would have received a total of 28 points because you scored some in the child care access and some in the social vulnerability index, but not as high as if you were in this zip code down here, which is 06605, where you would have scored 30 points. So that's just something to look at when you are thinking about this. And I do want to point out that right now, Congress seems to be on its way to a government shutdown. The notion that the federal government is going to come in with a whole bunch of more money for care for kids is highly unlikely. So we're going to have to live within our budget for care for kids. OEC has some reserves of what they got from the federal government during the pandemic. So they expect to be able to maintain the current caseload, but they will be bringing that down because they're not expecting any more money from the federal government. I mean, we expect we will get some, we just are not going to see an increase is what's likely. The House passed a bill to a continuing resolution that would have flat funded care for kids. The Senate did not pass that. And tomorrow we'll hear whether or not the Senate Democrats are inclined to negotiate or to have it go into a shutdown. There are a bunch of big controversial things, like Congress, when they passed the budget last July, did not extend the health insurance tax credits for people to buy insurance on the exchange. That's one of the things that is going to hurt a lot of people come January 1, and something that the Senate Democrats have been talking about, trying to get that restored. We don't know yet what's going to happen there. So right now, the federal government is sort of in shutdown mode. They have a whole process that they have to go through to prepare to shut down, and then they will all be furloughed. Essential workers will have to report and not get paid until a budget is passed. But most of those folks at Health and Human Services who deal with childcare or the Administration for Children and Families who deal with the care for kids and Head Start payments, all that stuff, they will all get furloughed. So that's just sort of the context out there. Early Start is all state money, and the new 1,000 slots will be funded through the endowment, which is all state money. So that is kind of the direction that we're moving, and in a month or two, there will be a new request for applications out there. So That's probably much more detailed than anybody expected, but that's, I'm happy to take questions, but I think we've also got folks from the panel who would like to talk.
Yeah, so great. Thank you, Meryl. Ava, I'm going to actually turn it over to you now.
Awesome. Good morning, everyone. Going back to the purpose of this conversation, right? And as Meryl mentioned, we had many calls come from the childcare community, really concerned about opportunities for slots and making it, right now things being very difficult to get the amount of kids that you need in your space. I do want to recognize on this call. I know Catherine's here. Catherine was the first call to me, but I also want to give a shout out to Maria Reyes, the SEIU CSEA Childcare President, and as well as advocate and leader Tashiana O'Connor, who, because of these calls, created meetings and opportunities to speak about this same topic in other venues. I think it's also important to come into this conversation understanding that there's two very different sides to the coin, right? We have areas in the state that have no childcare whatsoever, a true lack of childcare infrastructure, childcare that just doesn't exist, but the demand is there. And then we have other areas in the state of Connecticut where there's an abundance of childcare, but there's not enough slots. There's not enough money in order to allow all of you educators to have those slots, right? You don't have the finances and funding to pay your teachers, but there is demand in that area. There is a third reality that is unique to some areas in the state, looking at the vulnerability and in conversation with providers. I'll use parts of Waterbury as an example, where there is oversaturation, where there are an abundance of early educators that do exist, that are qualified and trained, much more than the square footage will demand, right? Much more than what the need is. At the end of the day, I think it's important to remember that more funding is necessary, and to navigate these very drastic versions of what is going on uh, in the state of Connecticut. As advocates, the best way forward is making sure that everyone has the funding necessary to get more slots and availability there. More funding means affordability for parents, then in turn creates opportunities for children and opportunities for your businesses to flourish. So we have amazing panelists here, each of them trying to do their piece of the puzzle of fixing this very difficult conversation and amazing work of figuring out how we can make sure that there's accessibility, funding, and spaces actually available. So I'm going to pass it over first to Catherine. I'm going to ask, 3 simple questions to get the conversation started, and then hopefully all of you can also chime in our community. So, Catherine, can you kick us off with, what have you heard on the field? What have providers told you? What's going on?
Hi, good morning, everyone. I just want to say thank God for waking us up and happy fall to us today on this first day of fall. What most of the providers are coming to me and calling me is, as you have said, Eva, in certain locations, we have desert zones. We have places that they need to open more childcare. So if you're in that area specifically, you could open 5 childcares and you're going to be successful. But then we have certain areas where on one street they have 4 daycares. So meaning in each of these daycares, the providers may have no children at all, or maybe just 2 children in their care because of the saturation of all the daycares in their area. So what we have come together, this maybe you're lucky enough to not live in one of these saturated areas, or maybe you are lucky enough to be able to open more daycares in your area. But when we see laundromats, when we see grocery stores, when we see supermarkets, we see that in certain areas you cannot open more than the amount that qualifies for the population of people in that area. But when it comes to childcare, there is not a gap, caps to it. So people could continue and continue and continue to open childcare when there is no need of childcare in that area. So providers have come together and say, to look at me as a voice for them. We have to do something. Something has to be done, because if we already have 400 childcares in that area, but we don't have the amount of populations for all of these childcares, we're not going to be able to eat. We're not going to be able to succeed with our businesses because of the saturation areas when it comes to childcare. But now, if you are in desert zones, you could open multiple daycares. You could open 5 daycares if you want. So it's just a matter of looking into OEC to see if we could put a caps to this in certain areas, so these desert zones are able to come along and open daycares in these desert zones.
So you're totally right that the state of Connecticut doesn't have any rules or legislation that says how many childcare spaces could exist. You know, it's an open market, so whoever passes the licensing and the inspection process and the regulations with the state has the opportunity to open. As long as they pass that process, they have the opportunity to open a childcare business. I'll pass it over now to Linda and Courtney, because these are two organizations that do represent the conversation of like, how do we make sure that there's accessibility? You know, how do we make sure that we're supporting providers? So Linda, the Women's Business Development Council has been around many, many years supporting women and men. But you have been, you know, top in the conversation of ensuring that there's money, that there's funding, and that we are, you know, moving ahead and moving forward with opportunities of spaces. What does that look like for WBDC?
Okay, well, first, thank you all for joining us this morning. And Catherine, I have to agree that I do hear that from my clients as well. There's certain areas where they're having challenges with enrollment. And then there's other areas where there's still room for growth, as you said. So in partnership with OEC, WBDC does administer grants for childcare providers. We do have, we just finished actually a round, and we hope to have another round in February, where businesses that are starting up can apply for anywhere from $5,000 to $25,000, depending on their license type. And then we also have a program where businesses that have been in business for at least 2 years can explore expanding. And one of the eligibility requirements of expanding is that you do have a wait list, and that you do will be increasing availability to families, right? So these grants are geared to find those areas where we still need, you know, childcare. Now, with that said, anybody can apply, but I encourage anyone who's thinking about this to meet with one of our business advisors. And as Meryl said, some of these initiatives and programs and things are a good fit for some programs, and they're not a good fit for other programs, right? We do encourage people to do a market analysis and make sure that you know, your area isn't already saturated with you know, with childcare, that, you know, you've really thought this through. And I'll just point out too that, like Meryl said, the issue of affordability is also a key factor in deciding on, you know, whether or not you want to expand your business or start a new childcare program. You may have less percentage of children to spots, but it could also be that the affordability piece is what's keeping them out of childcare or the workforce. I just talked to a grandmother who is supporting her son and daughter-in-law that have a new baby. the daughter-in-law would love to go back to work, but they're not going to qualify for Care for Kids, and her paycheck is going to be, it's zero. And it's a story I hear all the time. So I just think that that's an important piece of this puzzle.
Very real stories. And my God, WVDC works so hard to really be there, out there with the providers, walking this walk with them. So we definitely appreciate you in the community. Yep.
And one more plug, I am doing a workshop at the Kayak Conference on Thursday. If you guys are going, please join me. And I will be talking about our grants and how to prepare for not just our grant, but possibly Early Start, possibly the LISC grant. There's other opportunities that are coming about.
Thank you for that. I'll pass it over to Courtney. Courtney, the Connecticut Project has really taken the space by storm in the most positive ways. You've really come here and shared resources and staff to make sure the child community has an opportunity to flourish, right? So can you tell us more about what is the Connecticut Project doing? I know you have a lot of projects about density and expansion, so we want to hear more about that.
Yeah, thanks, Ava. I'll pick it up with Linda's last point to underscore this point about affordability. I was on the call last week presenting on findings from one of our rapid surveys. And in a prior survey, when we asked about childcare access and affordability, we heard resoundingly from families that affordability was the biggest barrier to them accessing childcare. And so I have a hunch that if we created more affordable slots, that 35% demand for parents with infants and toddlers would grow dramatically. And so I think we should be careful and be mindful of the fact that families might not be seeking childcare not because they don't need it, but because they can't afford it, and so they're forced into making other alternative options that work for their family. But in talking about the work that we're doing. The other thing that I think is important here is for us to get a better sense of what actual demand is for childcare. And this includes not only are families looking for it, but what kinds of hours are they looking for? Is it full-time? Is it part-time? Is it overnight or weekend care? The types of settings in which they're aligned with their preferences. Is it home-based settings, centers? We have, I think we apply research that has been done nationally to try to understand what demand is for childcare in Connecticut, but it's not a perfect picture, I think, of what Connecticut families in different communities are actually looking for. And so I think that the work that OEC has started to do to develop a portal, an enrollment and navigation portal for childcare, can play a really critical role here. If we can better understand what families are looking for in that portal and better align our supply with that demand, the system will be in a much better place. And so we're excited to be supporting the work that the Office of Early Childhood is doing around developing that portal.
It's a good segue to Coral to just give an opportunity, Coral here to chime in, who's data specialist here at OEC. The portal and other maps like Meryl presented and kicked us off with, how important is the data? How important is the information when OEC is trying to make those decisions? And Coral, hopefully you can chime in here.
Yeah, so we are really trying to take into account, as Meryl said, the kind of supply and demand and the need in those areas. And, we had the maps for the last RFA, and we'll have the same kind of situation for this fall RFA. And then we're also looking into ways that we can kind of better those measures moving forward. We won't really have a different measure for this next RFA because it is not that far away, but hopefully the next round we'll have a more specific measure to Connecticut families and the need specifically for early childcare, rather than the measures we're using now. But they'll be able to speak, I think, next week a little bit more on kind of the way we're going to be using that data for Early Start.
That's super helpful. And we do hope that today is like a precursor to next week's Monday morning call with OEC presenting. I will wrap it up here, but pass it over, not wrap up what I'm saying, but keep on the conversations to this community with our awesome MC Izzy. But add to this that conversations like this with the nonprofits, with the state of Connecticut, understanding what's really happening on the ground with providers like Catherine, being a voice of what's going on, allow us to better navigate how we're building childcare. So for those of you out there who are really scared and are not filling in your seats like you need to, you heard from people who are on in the field trying to fix this with you, be it the lack of funding to try to get the parents into your space because they just can't afford it, or maybe there's just too many childcare spaces springing up on your block, and there's not enough market research to understand what your community needs, or just you don't have the availability or funding to expand your space and the need is extremely severe and there. So we're dealing with so many versions of a childcare crisis, but just know that there is a community out there supporting educators. It might take time, but keep the pressure on. Let's keep the conversation going. Izzy, I'll pass it to you because I see a lot of comments and questions coming into the chat, and you're much better navigating that than me.
Well, there's a lot of comments in the chat. So actually, before I start them, do any of our panelists have any other things they want to say or respond to before I go to questions from the audience? Yeah, Catherine.
So I have text messages coming in because we did mention about the areas that are saturated. Providers are telling me that some of them have even thought to close their daycares because they have over a year after making a big investment, and they have over a year without having or being able to enroll any children to their daycare. But because of the saturation, is there anything that OEC could do when it comes to the market to verify if this is an area that needs more childcare? Because according to what they're saying, even though there is a saturation of childcare, they've been open for so long after this big investment. There every day there's a new childcare in the same areas, but we still have desert zones where families have to commute to get their children into daycare. So do OEC have something to verify, or not only to verify, because I believe they do have certain navigation systems to verify, but can this be possible? Is this something that could be done for future reference? Well, this area doesn't need any more daycare. Can that be possible to put a caps to it?
It's a big question. I don't know if there's I'm not qualified to answer that question. Does anybody here feel like they have any knowledge on it?
So we generally, in a market economy, don't have the government picking the winners and losers. We can all love that local hardware store with the creaky wooden floors and the big bins of nails. But when Home Depot opens down the street, they may go out of business.
Correct.
It's a competitive market. The only place where I know that a real needs assessment is done is with hospitals, where if you want to expand a new wing, you want to build a new cancer wing to your hospital, you've got to get approval to do that. But the primary reason there is that much of the money that's going into the healthcare system is coming from either Medicaid or Medicare, which is all government money. So that's where the government is essentially saying, we don't want to build excess capacity when we're the ones paying the bill, essentially. So in childcare, yes, Care for Kids and Early Start are sources of funding, but and in many places, those public programs are the primary source of money. In lots of other parts of the state, it's parents paying tuition. And so this is happening both in places where you've got a whole bunch of family childcare programs opening up. In other places, it's one of the big chains has opened up a new center down the street that's shinier, and the people who have been running a center for 20 years are now finding it hard to enroll. So it's market competition here. And as long as we're in a market economy, there's going to be programs that have been there for a while and close because somebody else is a better competitor.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Meryl. And I just want to point that out to all the providers who are on this call. It's a sad situation, but it's a real situation. And as everyone heard what Meryl have said, it's a competition. They're gonna continue to open daycares. Just make the difference, and so your facility will continue to succeed. Thank you, Meryl.
Thank you.
I want to
Yeah,
also
Linda.
point out, and Georgia put something in the comment too, that you really do need to do a really good business analysis of wherever you're going to open, right? So we have classes on it. We have individual one-on-one if you want to meet with somebody, but we always recommend check the market around you. Go to 211, see what other providers, there are already in the area. Call some of those providers and say, hey, do you have a wait list, or are you struggling for enrollment? And there's a lot of different ways to do market analysis, but this really comes down to your business. So you want to make good business decisions from the get-go. So, that's really the essence of what we are here for.
And for those who are not familiar, to the reference of Georgia Goldburn and Tammy Robinson, co-founders of Circle, out there, a statewide organization, nonprofit, to give resources to childcare businesses, home-based and also center-based businesses. But echoing, of course, Linda's comment that if you're looking for a way of like, what's the future look like, there are organizations there like WBDC, like Circle, trying to help you navigate that.
Yeah, and everyone, you are welcome. We don't actually we have a million comments in the chat, which I love. I'm having a hard time keeping up with it all. But if you have questions for any of our guests, this would be a good time to put them into the Q&A.
Minnie, I got one
yeah.
from Rocio about the map. So this was earlier, and I'm sorry, I would have paused and grabbed that first before we went to panels. But she was asking, what do the points mean?
So those were the points that were granted in the scoring of applications to get new early start slots. And so you got points for being in a childcare desert. You got points because you were in a socially vulnerable zip code. You got points based on whether or not you had accreditation. You got points based on whether or not you had staff that met the staff qualifications. And then there were some other things as well. But it's really important, if you're going to think about spending hours working on an application, that you really read through those points, the scoring system, to know whether or not, to make a decision as to whether or not it's worth wasting, spending the time, not wasting time, but spending the time to apply. If you were in an area that is not social, under the last scoring, so we don't know what the next round of funding will look like. But in last time, if you were in an area that wasn't very socially vulnerable and had a good supply of childcare, your likelihood of getting any of those slots was pretty low. And if you spent 15 hours doing an application, you probably could have spent your time doing something else more productively. If you look at the scoring and you conclude, I'm not going to score well in this area and this area, then you should probably decide, all right, I'm not going to apply this round.
There's also Coral. Do you want to give your update?
Yes, so I just wanted to point out, so the maps and the scoring that are currently up, those were for the previous RFA last year. There's going to be a new RFA, as Meryl mentioned, this fall. And he did mention that there's going to be some updates, and I just wanted to reiterate that the scores that are up there and the points that are up there are the ones from last fall. We're making adjustments to those, and when those are live, you'll be alerted that the new updates are available. But use that as kind of a way to look at it right now, but there will be changes over the next month or so.
Great, thank you. And there's a lot of comments in here that I think may be helpful to you as you guys are thinking that through. So after this is over, we'll take the chat file. Coral, I'll send it to you and you can kind of share it with anyone at OEC that you think, needs to see them. I know we always send them to the team, we send them to Maggie and everyone else, and I'll also include her as well. Catherine, go ahead.
I just want to point out because of a question that I've seen in the chat. So the saturated area, just to be clear, has less opportunity of being chosen for the early start. I just want to throw that out there. So the places with least daycare are able to get more points to apply for early start. So you have to look in the area when it comes to your zip code, how Meryl was doing it earlier. You have to look in the area of your zip code, whether is your location an area that is saturated of daycare, you will receive less points. If your location is in an area that has less daycare, you have more opportunities.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine.
I just
Linda.
want to follow that up with saying that, and I know we're going to get a much more detailed presentation next week on, I think, all of this. So, but in addition to looking at how many points you can get, this opportunity is going to be relatively complicated, and you really do need to look at it from a business perspective. Like Meryl said, this might not be the right opportunity for you. These spots that you'll be applying for will have a limit on the tuition that you can collect for those spots, and families will have to qualify for those spots. So those will be huge business considerations when you look at this early start opportunity.
Right, yeah, thank you, Linda. There's, and also, guys, there's next week, Office of Early Childhood is coming on. I know someone had asked about that. They're coming on, and that is going, that session, it's a little bit of a, it's a partnership session. What do we call it? I can't think of the word. Anyway, it's like we're like co-branding, but this is going to be also a parent focused session as well as provider focused. So for these calls, almost, I mean, every single one is, we are focused on providers, but the information is going to also be relevant to parents next week. So if you do want to share with your parents and invite them to come on, certainly they can watch it in the recording as well on the YouTube channel. It's Early Care Connection. You can subscribe there so you're notified when the new recordings come through. But if you do have parents that you think are going to be interested, or you think, want to share it in any way, next week is going to be one that would be open and welcome. I mean, anyone can join anytime, but a little bit more for parents than we typically are. So just wanted to let you all know, and also temper your expectations that this will be focused on you as always, but we're also making space for parents next week as well. Okay, so we've got a couple of questions in the Q&A, and Tashi, I'm going to call on you in just a minute, so you could be ready. So one question is just a quick one. Coral, I think this is for you. The updating scoring and the new RFA, you don't have a date yet on that, do you? Just sometime this fall?
It should be sometime in the, I assume not sometime in the next month or two. So we'll have a more concrete answer.
Great. There's a question about if it's able to access a number on programs that have closed and where those programs have closed. And are these all enrollment issue related, or have increased overhead costs of doing business impacted as well? Has anyone done a study on, I mean, I guess the question is, has anyone done a study on where centers have closed and what is the reason for those closures? Meryl, that might be something I'm going to direct it.
Yeah, there is a tool you can look up e-license at ct.gov, or it's elicense.ct.gov. And that lets you look up to generate rosters of, I can share my screen and I'll.
Oh, and Sherry just shared something in
Yeah.
in the chat as well. Sherry Sotera from 211 United Way.
Yeah. So this is e-license at ct. Just e-license.
I put it in the chat.
Yeah. And if you go to generate rosters, you can go here and come down to childcare licensing programs, and you can look at childcare centers and group homes that have closed, and you can look at, you can see how many have closed in the last year and how many have opened up. So you can go and look there, and it produces a spreadsheet that you'll download, and then you can compare. And you should know that anytime ownership changes, the old license, the old program is closed and a new one opens up. So I have frequently, when I looked at that, said, oh, geez, I didn't realize the YWCA closed a program. Well, actually what they did was they moved from one location to another. Still the same operator. But you need to look at that when you're trying to figure out closures, and to try and figure out which ones were real closures and which ones were just a change in license or a change in address.
Right. So what, Ava, what you put in, it's not totally clear that it's fully 82 centers. It could be that 82 centers closed, but of those, some of them were just a transfer of license. So that's a little bit, it's hard to get precise, but it does give you something. Meryl, we're just seeing maybe an aerial photo of something beautiful.
Okay.
To share your
Stop
screen.
and share.
Okay, a couple quick comments. Georgia saying Care for Kids is the biggest driver impacting providers serving low-income families. Parents are sitting on wait lists for months, and providers who decide to serve families are cutting their rates to keep families. This undermines an already weakened budget. I mean, yes, there's other comments here. Offering educators and families and or guardians to be able to look at childcare and not make the mistake of opening so many childcares next to each other, like an orientation. Linda, that sounds like something that would fall into your wheelhouse potentially. And a question about any outside the box grants and funding opportunities for childcare providers. So again, WBDC. So let's call on Tashiana. Tashi, you're welcome to join us in the conversation.
Okay. What I have done to help providers in my area is I advertise my daycare. Even when I'm full, I send referral. I send the parent to the other providers. But then when I talk to DCF, and I call DCF and I have friends that are workers, they saying that they have children that's there that no provider would take because of their behavioral or whatever need that they have, right? But then when we charge according to those behavior, like I was in a situation, right, which they found unfounded, that you overcharge them, you committed a fraud, but then these kids, so what that leave providers to do in order, okay, accept these children with behavioral issue and lowering their price. I recommend 6 children to a provider who have DCF issue. And when she told the DCF how much she's gonna charge, DCF was like, no, we're not paying that. We paying $300 per child, right? Even when you look at Care for Kids payment, how they pay higher, which is $415 or $450, but DCF wants you to charge them $300. So where did that leave provider? And that's where providers are asking, and that's a question I'm getting. How do we tackle that, right? How do we come by, okay, accept these kids with behavior, with no help, right? And we have DCF coming back and forth with us. So what I tell them, I said, okay, you have to feed your family. You accept them. But there's certain condition that you have to let DCF know. If they stay overtime, if they can't charge them late payments. So in this thing, we in a tick for tack. So I tell them, accept them, but there's the consequences. Like I tell you, I was in an issue where I charge them more, and they say, okay, the fact that you charge us X amount is fraudulent. My kids don't come until 7 o'clock, but you charge us for 8. My kids don't come until 9, but you charge us for 7. So we have, it's just we're between the rock and a hard place because we don't know what to do. And my thing to help them out, like I said earlier, I just advertise my business as being open. I have availability, even though I have a waiting list. My website, I have people fill out submission form, and I would send those over to providers. That's what I do in order to help fill the gap with providers.
Thanks, Tashi, for that comment. I think there's some questions about, let's see, about whether or not the charging, I don't think I completely understood that. Are you saying that you're charging folks more if they have behavioral issues, or it's just different than the DCF rate?
No, it's different from what Care for Kids rate, right? Like
Okay.
I have, like for example, I had 6 children. They comes in here with, they like fires. They like to light fires. They would set your house on fires. They comes in here where YMCA don't want them. The summer camp put them out. They can, no one else, no other program would accept them. I accept them. I get them structured because like a family childcare providers, we put in, we're a home away from home for these kids. We put everything in, right? So we charge according to the work that we put in.
Right.
With these centers. So the fact that we charge according to the work that we put in, these children was running out, running in the street, on highway, open the door. And if I'm not on the phone, they cannot get these children to sit straight. These kids would not listen to anyone else. And because of that, yes, I charge for my time and what I do, my work. And I know plenty of the provider charge the same for the stuff that they put in, their work, they value, right? Because we are valuable. When they put them in these centers, they don't have that one-on-one attention. They don't have that time to put into these children. And we as family child care provider put all that effort into them. And when we do and we charge for that, they saying, well, you're charging too much. For example, I charge them $450 per child. They saying, listen, no, we're only going to pay $300. I'm like, I'm not accepting it. And the fact that I charge them $450, they tell me I committed a fraud. Well, unfounded, of course, because they signed my contract. They signed a contract for it. I explained to them what I'm gonna charge. They wanted the 6 full-time slot. I tell them, listen, the 6 full-time slot you wanted, that's what you're gonna get. So, that's what you're gonna get. You sure you want it? They say school age. They come. They say, okay, when school is over, when they have holidays, we're gonna drop them there anyway. Half a day they be there, but they saying that they don't want you to charge them that. They only allowed to pay $300. That's what DCF said. I did not accept it.
Thank you. Thanks, Tashi. Yeah, I mean, listen, it sort of helps us understand the complexities of what everybody is dealing with here. Joanne has put some grant opportunities for small businesses right into the chat for folks. There's a lot of questions and a lot of comments. I hope people take the time to read through the chat. I'm just going to read through a couple more things in the Q&A before we wrap this up this morning. So one, I guess there's a question about whether 211 is doing any recommendations for parents or providers. And Sherry, maybe you can answer that in the chat if you're still here. Francesca wonders if there's going to be more funding for Care for Kids, or are we asking the state if the federal government is not going to? Another comment, centers have the space, the rooms, but no staff or money for furniture. Infant toddler spaces are in need in our town, big wait lists, but no spaces. Will OEC fund programs to complete rooms and staff them to be enrolled for infants and toddlers specifically, I believe. Someone wondering if there's grants for educators who've been in business more than 2 to 3 years. And then another comment kind of backing up Georgia, that Care for Kids waiting lists are really tremendously hurtful because they're bad for both families and providers. So with that, I'm going to just give our panelists kind of the last word. If you have any response to any of these or last things you'd like to say before we jump out for this morning.
Do you want me to go first?
Sure, that's great.
Okay, I just put our email address on the chat. So to make an appointment with an advisor, again, I just want to reinforce that before you open a business or expand, you need to do your homework, and we are here to help you to do that.
Great, thanks, Linda. And if you want to put your website maybe in the chat if you haven't had a chance to do that yet. Oh, and I see that you did put your email. Great. All right, Catherine, go ahead.
And I just want to throw out there before we wrap it up, when it comes to Care for Kids, if you apply now for Care for Kids, especially if this is a new family submitting the Care for Kids application, parent and provider agreement form, and everything that is needed. If you
hold on, Catherine, just one quick second. We have double interpretation in Spanish right now. Alba, I think Ava's taking over for you. And so just thank you, Alba. And Ava, you can go ahead. Thank you. Please go ahead, Catherine.
So if you are a new family and you're applying for Care for Kids and you apply for Care for Kids as of today, you will be on a wait list until next year. The time frame could be within 6 to 8 months to be on a wait list. So the only thing me as a provider can encourage all of the providers online today is, if you have families that are coming into your daycare without Care for Kids, is work with them when it comes to financials, because they need their kids to be in a daycare to make it to work, and us as providers, we need to make our ends meet. So right now it's a tough situation for families and providers, but we have to work together in order for us to sustain, because there is no funds right now for Care for Kids. Just to be clear, there's only funds for 23,000 kids, and we have a wait list of 3,000 and something of kids. So work with your families. Take what's coming to you until this is figured out.
Thanks, Catherine. Okay, Courtney or Coral?
Just wanted to mention, I know I brought up the enrollment and navigation portal, and there were a couple comments in the chat. The Office of Early Childhood is really just starting the engagement around this, and so I think it's likely this could be maybe a topic for an upcoming call. And I know that they plan to do some engagement sessions next month. So please encourage parents to come out to share their thinking around that. And as a provider community, hope that you all share your thoughts and opinions about what the potential that a tool like that could hold.
Great. And yeah, let me actually grab the link to that while you guys are talking. All right, Coral, you're up. Thanks so much, Courtney.
Yeah, so I think in the next month or so, look out for that updated scoring measure. The SVI and Desert will still be used as they are. They'll just have an update to the amount of points or scores that you would get for each of those measures. We should have testing a different measure in maybe next year. And so we'll probably have some sessions about that and what goes into that measure, but we're currently in development with it. So be on the lookout for that. And then next week, you'll hear more about the portal and early start.
Great, thank you. And I'm putting, let's see, the listening sessions. I don't know how many, let's see, most of them are actually, oh, you know what? Most of them are over, the ones that I have the sign up for. The final one that I have a sign up for is this call on Monday. So if there is someone,
my understanding is that in October, they'll do listening sessions about the portal, and then they may do some more listening sessions in November around the start. But
yes, perfect. I was going to say, if anyone has any information on how to register for those. But in the chat, we'll probably get that next week from Office of Early Childhood, I'm guessing.
I understand that the session on Friday morning with Connecticut CT that was recorded, and Meryl, you're usually really great about getting us links to those. Is that a possibility?
I'll ask about it. Yeah, this was on Friday.
I believe it's on Friday, maybe either Thursday or Friday morning. And it was.
Are you talking about the endowment meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
No, well, it wasn't it was an interview, I guess, on public TV.
Okay.
Anyway,
if you find it, you want to send it.
If you find it and you can send it, I think that would be helpful for people to be able to review. Oh, look, Louise has already put it on here. Good for you, Louise. Thank you.
And just a reminder to folks that we are going to send Commissioner Bai this kudo board upon her retirement, which I believe is October 3rd. So I'm going to post the link to it again in English and Spanish, and you're welcome to put in your well wishes for her there. Also, I know there was a lot shared in the chat. Can people download this chat yet? If you can't, I know everyone's Zoom is different, but we will post it with the recording. We put it in the description of the recording on YouTube. There you can there's so many links that were shared today. That's where you can access them. I know that Circle, who does a lot of work with parents, let's see, Georgia had actually put it in here. Well, I can't find it now because there's actually so much happening here, but I know Circle does a lot of work with parents. Sherry from 211 has put a bunch of links in here that may be useful to you. There's WBDC in here. So there's a lot to look at today. So if you don't have the opportunity to download this chat file, go to the YouTube and download it from there. You know, when it's posted again in the next 24 hours, hit subscribe to make it easy for yourself. So it just comes to your inbox. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you so much to all of our panelists. Really, really appreciate it. Let me just look at my notes and make sure I'm not forgetting something. We've got Office of Early Childhood next week. We have a call the following week. Then we're off for Columbus/Indigenous Peoples Day. If anyone is celebrating the Jewish New Year this year, Shana Tova, enjoy your holiday. I hope it's meaningful and full of delicious food and sweetness for the upcoming year. For those of you who aren't celebrating, I wish you all of that as well. It's a very universal message. Okay, thanks everyone. We will see you next week. Oh, seminar. Okay, that's right. There's a seminar. Miss Mia, if you want to post that actually in the chat, Circle is doing a seminar on October 25th, which we did mention last week. So Mia, you are just welcome to share the link to that right in the chat, and we'll keep this open for a minute so you can do so. All right, thanks everyone. Have a great week.